My nephew has protection. I control HR. Drop it, Vernon said with a dismissive wave, not even looking up from his computer. Know your place, Danny. The decision is final. The words hit me like a physical impact, knocking the air from my lungs. I stood frozen before his gleaming desk, watching him casually destroy 5 years of my dedicated work. 5 years of solving impossible engineering challenges. 5 years of watching less qualified people rise while I stayed behind. With all due respect, sir, your nephew isn't qualified to lead advanced projects. He can't explain basic aerodynamic principles without stammering. The wing concept that saved this company millions was my design, my innovation. I earned that promotion. Vernon finally looked up, annoyance flickering across his face. Are you suggesting I'm playing favorites? Kyle has an impressive background. He's brought fresh perspectives to our team. Fresh perspectives. I couldn't help the edge in my voice. He asked me yesterday what thrust vectoring meant. That's undergraduate material, sir. And those accomplishments on his resume? I checked with people at those companies. No one remembers him doing what he claims. Enough! Vernon's palm slammed against the desk. You're becoming a problem, Danny. A problem I don't need. My nephew has protection. I control HR. Drop it. The anger burning inside me remained contained, but just barely. I straightened my spine and looked directly into his eyes. You have no idea who you're dealing with. You have 10 minutes to fix this. Vernon's laugh was short and sharp. Are you threatening me? With what exactly? Nobody will believe you over me. This conversation is over. I left without another word, closing his door softly behind me. My heart hammered in my chest as I walked through the maze of cubicles, nodding mechanically at colleagues. Nobody knew what had just happened. Nobody knew what I was about to do. The weight of my phone felt heavy in my pocket. One call would change everything. Wait, before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying this story so far, please tap that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Your support means everything, and it helps me keep sharing these real-life dramas with you. Now, let's get back to what happened after I left Vernon's office. My name is Danielle Keegan, but everyone calls me Danny. I've always been the person who solves problems others can't crack. Growing up with 4 brothers taught me to fight for recognition, a skill that served me well in the male-dominated aerospace industry. For 5 years, I'd been the backbone of Aerodyne's innovation team. When the previous wing design failed crucial safety tests, threatening a multi-million-dollar government contract, I worked 80-hour weeks developing an alternative that ultimately saved the project. The industry publications praised the revolutionary design, though my name appeared nowhere in the press releases. I accepted staying in the shadows because I believed my work would eventually speak for itself. When Arthur, our advanced projects director, announced his retirement, I thought my moment had finally arrived. I had the experience, the technical knowledge, and the respect of the engineering team. Then Kyle appeared. Kyle was Vernon's nephew, 28 years old with artificially whitened teeth and designer suits that seemed at odds with an engineer's salary. His resume boasted impressive achievements at 3 different aerospace companies, yet he struggled with concepts I mastered in my second year of college. We're lucky to have Kyle join our team, Vernon had announced at the monthly meeting. He brings extraordinary talent and fresh insights to Aerodyne. I watched my colleagues exchange glances. We all knew what was happening, but nobody dared say it aloud. 3 weeks later came the announcement that confirmed our suspicions. Kyle would take over as Advanced Projects Director when Arthur retired next month. The injustice burned inside me, but I tried to follow proper channels. I scheduled a meeting with Human Resources to discuss my concerns about Kyle's qualifications. We appreciate your dedication, Danny, said Priya from HR, her expression sympathetic but firm. But we need you to be a team player here. Kyle has excellent credentials, and Vernon speaks very highly of him. Have you verified those credentials? I asked. Because I've made some calls, and that won't be necessary, Priya interrupted, suddenly looking uncomfortable. The hiring committee has reviewed everything thoroughly. Next, I approached my direct supervisor, Arthur himself, the man whose position was at stake. I know exactly what you're feeling, Danny, Arthur said quietly as we sat in the empty conference room. And between us, you deserve that promotion. But Vernon has the ear of the board. He's been here 20 years. Fighting him isn't worth ending your career over. So we just let someone unqualified lead critical safety projects? Our designs go into aircraft carrying hundreds of passengers, Arthur. Arthur's shoulders slumped. Sometimes we have to pick our battles. The system isn't fair, but it's the system we have. That conversation led me to Vernon's office, to my ultimatum, and now to the decision I never wanted to make. I walked to my car in the underground parking garage, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Inside the privacy of my vehicle, I pulled out my phone and stared at it. The contact name glowed back at me. Eliza Wilson. Eliza and I had been roommates in college 15 years ago. We'd stayed close as our careers diverged, mine into aerospace engineering, hers into government oversight. She was now the Federal Aviation Administration's lead safety inspector scheduled to approve Aerodyne's new commercial aircraft line next week. I had never used our friendship professionally. I had built my career on merit and hard work, but Vernon had changed the rules of the game. My finger hovered over her name. Was I really going to do this? Once this call was made, there would be no going back. I thought about Kyle, who would be responsible for decisions that affected passenger safety without understanding basic principles. I thought about the design modifications he'd already approved without proper testing. Nothing catastrophic, but concerning enough that they needed expert review and a rubber stamp from someone who couldn't tell aluminum alloys apart. I pressed call. Hey, Danny. Eliza's voice was warm. I was just thinking about you. I'll be in town next week for the Aerodyne inspection. That's actually why I'm calling, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. We need to talk about some modifications that have been approved for the new aircraft line. There are safety concerns you should know about before the inspection. What kind of concerns? Her tone immediately shifted to professional alertness. Design changes approved without proper testing protocols, modifications to control systems that haven't been through the full review process. I took a deep breath. And most importantly, the person who approved them lacks the qualifications to make those judgments. That's a serious allegation, Danny. I know. I wouldn't make it if I wasn't certain. Silence stretched between us. Then Eliza spoke carefully. This sounds like something that needs an emergency review before the scheduled inspection. I can arrange a meeting with the board tomorrow morning. I'll need you to provide specific details. I can do that, I said. After hanging up, I sat motionless in my car. Had I crossed a line? Would this decision haunt my career? The aerospace industry was tight-knit. Word would spread about what I'd done. My phone lit up. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello? Who the hell are you? The voice was female, tight with barely controlled panic. This is Miriam Ashford, Aerodyne board chair. The government inspector just called demanding an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. She mentioned potential safety concerns from an insider. My heart raced. Yes, Ms. Ashford. I'm Danielle Keegan from the innovation team. Do you understand what this could do to our certification timeline? To our stock value when this leaks? To our entire government contract? I understand exactly what it could do, I replied quietly. We're ready to accept all of your terms. Just stop what you started, she pleaded. Whatever you want. Just tell your friend to back off. I tried addressing my concerns through proper channels, I said. I was told to know my place. The line went silent for a moment. Then Miriam spoke again, her voice carefully controlled. What exactly do you want, Ms. Keegan? That question hung in the air between us. What did I want? Justice? Recognition? Or something more? Before I could answer, my phone signaled another incoming call. I asked, Vernon. I asked Miriam to hold and switched calls. What have you done? Vernon hissed without preamble. His voice had lost all its previous confidence. The FAA inspector just called an emergency meeting. She mentioned concerns about Kyle's qualifications and modified designs. I believe I mentioned you had 10 minutes to fix the situation, I said calmly. You laughed. You can't do this. You'll never work in aerospace again. I'll make sure of it. That's where you're wrong, Vernon. The inspection is happening because there are legitimate safety concerns. Your nephew approved modifications without proper testing. That's not spite, that's fact. Tell me what you want, he said, his voice suddenly pleading. A promotion? Money? Name it. I want the qualified person to lead advanced projects. I want accountability, and I want assurance that safety isn't compromised for nepotism. Fine, you can have the director position. I'll move Kyle somewhere else. Just call off the inspector. It's too late for that, I said. The concerns have been officially logged. The inspection will happen. But how badly it goes for Aerodyne depends on what happens next. I switched back to Miriam. I'm sorry for the wait, Ms. Ashford. As I was about to explain, I want three things. First, I want to be named Executive Director of Safety and Innovation, reporting directly to the board, not to Vernon. Second, I want to build my own team of qualified engineers. Third, I want Vernon and Kyle transferred away from any position that influences critical design decisions. That's substantial, Miriam said carefully. The board would need to discuss this. Of course, you have until the emergency inspection tomorrow at 9 a.m. I should mention that I've documented all the improper design approvals and qualification discrepancies. If Aerodyne chooses to retaliate against me, that documentation will go directly to the FAA and the press. You've thought this through, Miriam said, sounding almost impressed. I'm an engineer. Thinking through problems is what I do. As I hung up, my hands finally began to shake. I'd just gambled my entire career on one bold move against a powerful executive. But sometimes, standing up for what's right requires risking everything. I had no idea if they would meet my demands or if I'd just committed professional suicide. All I knew was that I couldn't remain silent any longer. The next 8 hours would determine everything. 9 o'clock that evening found me sitting in my modest apartment, staring at the walls. The bold move I'd made earlier still didn't feel real. My cat, Penny, sensed my anxiety and curled against my leg, purring softly as if trying to reassure me. "What did I just do, Penny?" I whispered, scratching behind her ears. Either I just saved my career or completely destroyed it. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I left the office. 6 missed calls from Vernon, 4 from numbers I didn't recognize, 12 text messages asking what was happening. Word had spread through the company like wildfire. Something big was brewing. I'd turned off all notifications and spent the evening meticulously organizing my evidence. Every email about the wing design that saved the company millions. Screenshots of the modified specifications Kyle had approved without proper testing. Witness statements from 3 engineers who heard Kyle ask basic questions that any qualified aerospace engineer should know. At 9:42 p.m., my doorbell rang. My heart jumped to my throat. Nobody ever visited this late. I approached the door cautiously and checked the peephole. Arthur stood in the hallway, looking exhausted. My retiring boss, the current advanced projects director whose position was at the center of this storm. I opened the door. "Arthur, this is unexpected. May I come in?" he asked, his voice low. "There are some things you should know before tomorrow." I hesitated, then stepped aside. Arthur had always been fair to me, even if he hadn't fought for my promotion. He entered and declined my offer of tea, remaining standing. "The board has been in emergency session for the past 3 hours," he said without preamble. "Vernon is fighting for his life in there." "What do you mean?" Arthur's expression was grim. "This isn't the first time Vernon has placed unqualified relatives in key positions. 2 years ago, before you joined our team, his brother-in-law briefly headed procurement. He approved substandard materials that nearly caused a testing failure." I stared at him. "I never heard about this." "It was hushed up. The board gave Vernon a warning and made him remove his brother-in-law. They thought he'd learned his lesson." Arthur shook his head. "When you triggered the FAA inspection, Miriam started digging. She found a pattern." My mouth went dry. "What kind of pattern?" "Vernon has been building a network of friends and family throughout the company, people who owe him loyalty over qualified candidates. The board was blind to it until now." He paused. "I'm here because Vernon is trying to paint you as disgruntled and unstable. He's claiming you fabricated evidence because you couldn't handle being passed over." Anger flared in my chest. "That's ridiculous. I have documented proof. It's strong and—" Arthur held up his hand. "I know. That's why I'm here. I've decided to speak to the board tomorrow, to tell them what I know about your contributions and Kyle's lack of qualifications." I sat down heavily on my couch. "Why now, Arthur? Why didn't you speak up before?" "It's—" His face flushed with shame. "Because I was a coward. I'm retiring in 4 weeks with a generous package. I didn't want to rock the boat." He met my eyes. "But what you did today, having the courage to risk everything for what's right, it made me realize I can't leave this way. I can't let Vernon destroy someone else's career to advance his family." A lump formed in my throat. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Vernon has powerful allies. Tomorrow won't be easy." After Arthur left, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, rehearsing what I would say at the emergency inspection. Around midnight, my phone chimed with a text from Eliza. "Be prepared. They'll try to discredit you." At 6 a.m., exhausted but resolute, I dressed in my most professional outfit, charcoal pants, cream blouse, and the navy blazer I reserved for important presentations. As I applied minimal makeup, I studied my reflection. The woman staring back had dark circles under her eyes, but a determined set to her jaw. I arrived at Aerodyne headquarters at 7:30, wanting to be early and settled before the 9 a.m. meeting. The security guard gave me an odd look as I badged in. Clearly, he'd heard something was happening. The office was eerily quiet for a workday, with most cubicles empty. I headed to my workspace to gather additional materials and found Ryan from my team already there, looking concerned. "Danny," he said in a hushed voice, "everyone's talking. Is it true you reported safety issues to the FAA?" "I reported concerns through the proper channels," I said carefully. Ryan glanced around nervously. Vernon's assistant was clearing out his office earlier. My eyebrows shot up. "What?" "Yeah, putting things in boxes. And there's a rumor the board has been here since 5 a.m. He lowered his voice further. "And Kyle didn't badge in today." Before I could process this information, my phone rang. Miriam Ashford. "Ms. Keegan," she said when I answered. "Please come to the executive conference room immediately. The inspection isn't until 9, I said, checking my watch. It was only 7:45. "This is a pre-meeting. Just you, me, and 2 board members. Now please." My pulse quickened. "I'm on my way." Ryan gave me a thumbs up as I grabbed my materials and headed for the elevator. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this an ambush? Were they going to try to pressure me into withdrawing my complaints before Eliza arrived? The executive conference room occupied the corner of the top floor, with glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city. As I approached, I could see 4 people inside, not 3, as Miriam had indicated. Miriam sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 older men I recognized from company photos as board members. The 4th person was Vernon. My steps faltered. Vernon's presence suggested this wasn't going in my favor. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and entered. "Ms. Keegan, thank you for joining us," Miriam said formally. "Please sit." I took the only empty chair, directly across from Vernon. His face was ashen, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Before the FAA inspection, we wanted to address the situation directly," Miriam continued. "Mr. Harris has something to say." Vernon cleared his throat. "I've submitted my resignation, effective immediately." I blinked in surprise, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry?" "The board has accepted my resignation," Vernon said, his voice hollow, "and withdrawn Kyle's appointment as Advanced Projects Director." Miriam took over. "Ms. Keegan, the board has conducted an emergency review of the situation. What we found was concerning, not just regarding Kyle's qualifications, but a pattern of questionable appointments and decisions over several years." One of the board members, a silver-haired man with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "We've spent the night reviewing personnel files and project approvals. We found at least 7 instances where Vernon placed underqualified friends or family in positions they shouldn't have held. And more troublingly," the other board member added, "we identified multiple cases where safety protocols were abbreviated or bypassed entirely." I struggled to keep my expression neutral. I wasn't aware of the extent. "Neither were we," Miriam said grimly, "until you forced us to look." Vernon finally spoke again. "I want to be clear that I never intentionally compromised safety. I believed in the people I promoted." "Regardless of intent," Miriam said sharply, "the effect was the same. And now we face an FAA inspection that could potentially ground our entire new aircraft line." My mind raced. This was unfolding far differently than I'd expected. "What happens now?" Miriam slid a folder across the table. "Inside is a written offer. We're prepared to meet all your conditions. Executive Director of Safety and Innovation, reporting directly to the board. Authority to build your own team. Vernon and Kyle are already out." I opened the folder and skimmed the document. The terms were exactly as I'd requested, with a salary significantly higher than I'd anticipated. "This is contingent on the FAA inspection, I assume?" The silver-haired board member shook his head. "No, this offer stands regardless. We need someone with your integrity heading safety operations. The question is whether you can help us address the issues before the inspector arrives." I looked at Vernon, who sat in defeated silence, then back to the board members. "I need to understand something first. Why wasn't Arthur in this meeting? He's still the current Advanced Projects Director." The 3 board members exchanged glances. "Arthur came to us last night," Miriam finally said. He provided detailed information about your contributions and Kyle's shortcomings. He also admitted his own failure to speak up earlier. He offered his immediate resignation as part of taking responsibility. My heart sank. Did you accept it? We're discussing that. His honesty counts in his favor, but his silence until now is troubling. I took a deep breath. I have conditions beyond what's in this folder. Vernon's head snapped up, his expression incredulous. Go on, Miriam said cautiously. First, Arthur stays until his planned retirement date. His experience is valuable for transition, and he ultimately did the right thing. Miriam nodded slowly. We can agree to that. Second, I want a complete safety audit of every project Vernon or his appointees have touched in the past 3 years, conducted by an independent third party. Reasonable, the silver-haired board member said. Third, I want a written acknowledgement of my contributions to the wing design project, including in any future publications or presentations. Done, Miriam said. And finally, I said, looking directly at Vernon, I want your assurance that every employee affected by nepotism will have their cases reviewed fairly for possible advancement or compensation. Vernon's jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly. Then I'll help you prepare for the FAA inspection, I said. I believe we can address the most critical issues before 9 a.m. if we start immediately. Miriam stood. I'll have legal finalize the paperwork while we work. Thank you, Ms. Keegan. As we left the conference room to begin the urgent safety review, Vernon remained seated, staring out at the city skyline that was no longer his to command. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. I assembled a small team of the most trustworthy engineers, and we systematically identified and documented every questionable design modification Kyle had approved. We prepared detailed explanations of how each would be properly tested and, if necessary, revised. At precisely 9 a.m., Eliza arrived with 2 additional FAA inspectors. Her eyebrows rose slightly when Miriam introduced me as the incoming Executive Director of Safety and Innovation, but she maintained her professional demeanor. We've identified several areas of concern, I said, leading them through our findings. We're not hiding anything. These modifications were approved improperly, and we're taking full responsibility for correcting them. The inspection was thorough and tense. At several points, I thought we might still lose certification despite our preparations. One particular control system modification had progressed further than I realized, potentially affecting handling characteristics. During a brief break, Eliza pulled me aside. You've been busy since yesterday. It's been eventful, I admitted. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly. Taking a leadership role in a company with these issues? I nodded. Someone needs to fix the culture here. It might as well be me. She studied my face. You always were stubborn. Just promise me one thing. If you find more problems, you'll report them properly, not hide them. You have my word. The inspection continued until late afternoon. When it concluded, Eliza didn't immediately announce her decision, instead conferring privately with her team. The waiting was excruciating. Finally, she returned to the conference room where the board, Arthur, and I sat anxiously. Aerodyne has serious procedural issues that must be addressed, she began, her expression stern. However, we acknowledge the company's transparency today and the concrete plans for remediation. Miriam leaned forward. And our certification? Conditional approval, Eliza said, subject to implementing all the corrections we've outlined and submitting to monthly progress reviews for the next 6 months. The relief in the room was palpable. Conditional approval was the best we could have hoped for under the circumstances. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, Arthur approached me. Congratulations, Executive Director. You've accomplished more in 24 hours than most people do in a career. I smiled tiredly. Thanks for speaking up, Arthur. It mattered. I should have done it sooner. He paused. There's something you should know. After the board meeting last night, I overheard Vernon on his phone. He was furious, talking to someone about making her pay once this blows over. My smile faded. You think he'll try to retaliate? Arthur nodded grimly. Vernon doesn't forgive people who cross him, and he still has connections in the industry. Watch your back. As Arthur walked away, I felt the weight of his warning. I'd won this battle decisively, but Vernon was still a powerful man with wounded pride. This might not be over yet. The thought should have frightened me, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. If Vernon wanted to continue this fight, he would learn that I was just getting started. Tomorrow would be my first official day as executive director. The real work of transformation was just beginning. And if Vernon thought today was bad, he had no idea what was coming next. 2 weeks into my new role as executive director of safety and innovation, I was already drowning in the enormity of the task before me. Vernon's influence ran deeper than anyone had realized. Every day brought new discoveries of questionable decisions, abbreviated testing protocols, and unqualified personnel in critical positions. "How bad is it?" Arthur asked during our daily morning meeting. He'd become an invaluable ally in navigating the company's complex structure. I pushed a stack of reports across my desk. Worse than we thought. The wing design for the military contract? The calculations were fudged to meet the deadline. It's sound enough to fly, but nowhere near the performance metrics we promised. Arthur winced. That contract is worth nearly $100 million. I know, and there's more. I pulled up an email on my screen. 3 of Vernon's appointees in quality control have been approving components that don't meet specifications. They've been marking them as acceptable variances. Have you told the board? I'm presenting a full report tomorrow. They're not going to be happy. Arthur leaned back in his chair, studying me with concern. You look exhausted, Danny. Are you sleeping? I wasn't. Every night brought new anxieties about the magnitude of what I'd undertaken. The responsibility for fixing years of corner cutting and nepotism now rested squarely on my shoulders. Plus, there was Vernon's threat to consider. I'm fine, I lied, just adapting to the new position. After Arthur left, I stared at the mountain of documents on my desk. This wasn't just about my promotion anymore. The safety of pilots, passengers, and military personnel relied on these aircraft performing as promised. Lives were literally at stake. My assistant, Zoe, knocked on my open door. Danny, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Who is it? A Mr. Tanner from Orion Aerospace. He doesn't have an appointment. I frowned. Orion was our biggest competitor. Show him in. Jordan Tanner was tall with salt and pepper hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. He declined my offer of coffee and got straight to the point. I'll be direct, Miss Keegan. Word has spread about your situation here. I'm authorized to offer you a position at Orion as our head of engineering. Substantial salary increase, full team authority, and none of. He gestured vaguely around him. This mess to clean up. I blinked in surprise. That's unexpected. Is it? You exposed serious problems in a major aerospace company. That took courage and integrity. Those are qualities Orion values. He slid a folder across my desk. All the details are inside. We'd need your answer within the week. After he left, I sat stunned, staring at the folder. The offer was tempting, a clean slate without the uphill battle I now faced. I could walk away from Vernon's looming threat and start fresh. But something felt off about the timing. Later that afternoon, during a meeting with my newly formed safety team, I received a text from an unknown number. Parking garage, level 3, 5:30 p.m. Come alone if you want to save your career. My pulse quickened. Anonymous messages were never good news. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity and concern won out. If someone had information about more safety issues, I needed to hear it. At 5:30, I cautiously approached level 3 of the parking garage, my phone ready to dial security. The concrete structure was mostly empty. The workday ended for most employees. A figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Kyle. I tensed immediately. Vernon's nephew looked different from when I'd last seen him. His designer clothes replaced by casual wear, his confident swagger gone. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice subdued. What do you want, Kyle? He glanced nervously around the garage. I need to warn you. Uncle Vernon is planning something. Something big. I'm already aware he wants revenge. Kyle shook his head. It's worse than that. He's been making calls to everyone who owes him favors. He arranged that Orion job offer. I frowned. Why would he want me to go to a competitor? Because he's setting you up. If you take it, he has evidence ready to provide to Orion showing you stole proprietary designs. It would destroy your career there before it began. My mind raced. And if I don't take it? Then phase 2 begins. He's gathering statements from people claiming you've been falsifying safety reports to make him look bad. He has someone on your team feeding him information. The betrayal stung. Someone I'd trusted was working against me? Why are you telling me this, Kyle? You lost your position because of me. His eyes dropped to the ground. Because I never wanted any of this. Uncle Vernon pushed me into a role I knew I wasn't qualified for. I tried to tell him, but he wouldn't listen. Said it was my birthright to lead at Aerodyne. He looked up, his expression earnest. I'm actually a decent marketing guy. That's what I studied. But aerospace engineering? I was drowning from day one. I studied his face for signs of deception, but saw only genuine distress. There's something else, Kyle continued. Uncle Vernon has a meeting tomorrow with 2 board members, Philip and James. They've always been his allies. He's convinced them to call for a vote of no confidence in your leadership. My stomach tightened. Based on what? He's going to claim you've exaggerated the safety issues to justify your promotion, that you're creating a crisis to make yourself look like a savior. I leaned against a nearby car, processing this information. Vernon was moving faster than I'd anticipated. I'd been focused on fixing the company's problems, not defending my position. Why should I believe you? I finally asked. Kyle pulled out his phone and played a recording, Vernon's voice discussing exactly the plan he'd just outlined. The evidence was undeniable. What do you want in exchange for this information? I asked cautiously. Nothing. Consider it an apology. I never should have accepted that position. He pocketed his phone. Just, if things ever settle down, maybe put in a good word for me in marketing. That's where I actually belong. After Kyle left, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, formulating a plan. Vernon was coming for me, and he had allies. I needed to move quickly. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. and immediately called Miriam Ashford. I need an emergency board meeting, today, before the scheduled 2 p.m. session. That's highly unusual, she replied, sounding concerned. What's happened? Vernon is making his move, and he's turned Philip and James against me. I have evidence they need to hear before they make any decisions. There was a long pause. I'll arrange it for 10 a.m. That's the earliest I can get everyone together. I spent the next 3 hours preparing my presentation and gathering allies. Arthur agreed to speak on my behalf. 3 engineers from my team volunteered to present their findings on the safety issues. I even reached out to Eliza at the FAA, who provided a statement confirming the legitimacy of our safety concerns. At 9:45, I walked into the boardroom with my team, only to find Vernon already there, looking smugly confident. Philip and James sat beside him, their expressions closed and judgmental. This is an unexpected development, Vernon said smoothly. I was under the impression our meeting was at 2 p.m. Plans change, Miriam replied coolly, taking her seat at the head of the table. Ms. Keegan has raised concerns that couldn't wait. Vernon's confidence wavered slightly. What concerns? I connected my laptop to the projector. Concerns about a coordinated effort to undermine Aerodyne's new safety protocols and discredit my leadership through false allegations. Vernon's face reddened. That's absurd. If anyone has fabricated allegations, it's you. I thought you might say that. I clicked to the first slide, a transcript of Kyle's recording. This is a conversation between you and board members Philip and James from yesterday evening. You'll note the detailed discussion of how to force me out based on claims that I've exaggerated safety issues. Philip and James shifted uncomfortably in their seats. You can't verify that transcript, Vernon snapped. I don't need to. I played the actual recording, Vernon's voice filling the room with damning clarity. Vernon's face went from red to ashen. Where did you get that? Your nephew has a conscience, it seems. For the next hour, I methodically presented evidence of every accusation Vernon had planned to make against me, alongside proof of its falsehood. I showed the board the Orion job offer and explained how it was meant to trap me. When I finished, the boardroom was silent. Vernon stared at the table, defeated for the second time. If these allegations are true, Miriam said slowly, then this represents an attempt to compromise Aerodyne's safety culture and regulatory standing for personal revenge. They're true, I said confidently. And there's more. During our safety audit, we discovered that Vernon has been receiving payments from a component supplier that repeatedly failed to meet specifications but was approved anyway. This was news even to Vernon, whose head snapped up in shock. That's a lie. I never took bribes. Not bribes, I clarified. Consulting fees to a company registered to your wife's maiden name. We found the connection while tracking the component approval chain. Miriam stood abruptly. Vernon, Philip, James, you'll wait outside while the rest of the board discusses this matter privately. The 3 men filed out, Vernon shooting me a look of pure hatred as he passed. The remaining board members spoke in hushed, urgent tones. I caught fragments, legal implications, regulatory fallout, media exposure. Everyone, after 20 minutes, They called us back in. Vernon, Philip, and James were noticeably subdued. Miriam addressed me first. Miss Keegan, the board extends its apology for this situation. We unanimously reaffirm our confidence in your leadership. Then she turned to Vernon. As for you, the board has decided to refer this matter to legal counsel for potential criminal charges. Your consulting arrangement with our supplier appears to violate both company policy and federal contracting laws. Vernon went completely still. You can't prove intent. Perhaps not, Miriam agreed. But the appearance of impropriety is enough to trigger a federal investigation. Given Aerodyne's government contracts, that would mean the Department of Justice getting involved. Vernon's lawyer, who had arrived during the deliberation, whispered urgently in his ear. The board is prepared to offer you one alternative, Miriam continued. Immediate severance with no benefits, a legally binding non-disclosure agreement, and your commitment to leave the aerospace industry entirely. In exchange, Aerodyne will handle this matter internally. Vernon's shoulders slumped in defeat. I'll take the deal. As Vernon signed the severance agreement, I felt no satisfaction, only relief that this chapter was finally closing. The real victory wasn't personal revenge. It was the opportunity to transform Aerodyne's safety culture and ensure that merit, not connections, determined advancement. 6 months later, Aerodyne passed its FAA follow-up inspection with flying colors. Our military contract was fulfilled with components that exceeded specifications. Kyle found his place in the marketing department, where his actual talents shone, and I assembled a team of the industry's most qualified engineers, many of whom had been previously overlooked due to Vernon's nepotism. The true revenge wasn't destroying Vernon. Sudden, it was building something better from the ruins of his corrupt system. He lost everything that mattered to him, his power, his reputation, his industry standing, and I gained everything I'd worked for: recognition, authority, and the chance to lead with integrity. The night after our successful FAA inspection, Eliza raised a toast at our celebration dinner. To Danny, who taught us all that standing up for what's right isn't just good ethics, it's good business. As applause filled the room, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. One moment of courage had changed everything, not just for me, but for hundreds of employees and thousands of people who would fly safely in our aircraft. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you destroy, but what you build in its place. If this story resonated with you, please tap that like button and subscribe for more real stories about standing up against workplace injustice. Have you ever had to take a stand against unfair treatment at work? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to find their courage.